A lasting ceasefire in Syria. That's what the leaders of Turkey, Russia and Iran pledged on Wednesday as they wrapped up their trilateral summit in Ankara. The meeting took place amid new significant developments in Syria, the capture of Afrin by Turkish-backed forces and the evacuation of 200,000 people from eastern Ghouta, which the Assad regime says is now under its control. Erdogan, Putin and Rouhani stressed there could be no military solution to the Syrian conflict and that a negotiated peace was the only way forward.
No country has the right to make decisions for the future of Syria. The future of Syria belongs to the people of Syria. It's the people of Syria who will eventually decide about their future by voting for amendments to the constitution and taking part in free elections.
Earlier in the week, US President Donald Trump stunned reporters when he said he wanted US troops to be out of Syria. The White House was then forced to backtrack on those comments, stating the US will continue to keep its 2,000 troops in Syria to back YPG terrorists fighting Daesh. And to discuss this further, I'm joined in the studio by Halil Akinci. He's the former Turkish ambassador to Russia, and by Yury Barmin. He is an analyst at the Russian International Affairs Council. Thank you so much for being here. I'll start with you, Yury. How indispensable is Turkey for Russia?
I think, the summit that took place in Ankara a few days ago definitely showed that Russia is looking at Turkey as that primary partner that should help, bring about the political solution to Syria. We saw a short, break in diplomatic relations in 2016, and we see how painful it was to both countries. So now, Russia understands that politically, without Turkey, it cannot bring the opposition to the table. It cannot sort of provide that additional weight to Russia's own, designs for Syria's solution that Russia is looking to implement.
It might be a tricky question, but I just want to have a repeat of that. In a zero-sum game, Russia has Turkey and Iran to choose from when it comes to Syria. There's this perception that Russia now wants to hedge its bets with Turkey. Would that be a fair statement to make?
You see, I think it's a little different with Iran and Turkey because Turkey, like I said, is hugely important in the political dimension. Iran, it provides that necessary weight on the ground in Syria, something that Turkey cannot necessarily do in the south of Syria, for example. So I would say these are three elements of one, of one design, of one equation, if you want. If you remove one of them, it's not going to work anymore.
Ambassador Akinci.
Well, first of all, we have to look at a broader picture. It seems that there's a division of labor from the Western point of view in Syria, that certain countries should carry the burden, like Jordan, Turkey, neighbors should carry the burden, but they should not be involved in decision making. So the cooperation of Turkey, Iran and Russia is regional ownership, showing all the world that we are also there. So Turkish presence, everybody is present in Syria, and Turkish presence is being criticized. There is no justification for that. There is no justification for that. All the same, they don't need the justification. They just criticize. France has a right to be in Syria. United States has a right to be in Syria, but Turkey doesn't have a right to be in Syria. This is ridiculous, more than ridiculous. So we are correcting a situation there. We are not taking any additional steps.
Well, you're saying that the US has a right to be there, France has a right to be there. It seems that the US President Donald Trump doesn't want to be in Syria. Let's take a listen to what Donald Trump had to say on keeping US troops in Syria.
I want to get out. I want to bring our troops back home. I want to start rebuilding our nation.
So that was Donald Trump saying, I want to get troops out. But later, the White House press secretary, Sarah Sanders, came out and said this.
The president's maintained since the beginning he's not going to put an arbitrary timeline. He is measuring it in actually winning the battle, not just putting some random number out there.
No firm departure date from Sarah Sanders, but Trump is saying we want to get out. What's the mixed messages? I'll begin with you, Yury.
Look, at this point, I would not read too much into what Trump is saying, because you know the State Department is extremely understaffed on all fronts, right? The White House policies, Donald Trump's statements, sometimes they don't match what's happening, you know, in U.S. Foreign policy. So for the time being, I would take this wait and see approach, and see what's actually happening on the ground. We've seen that trip of Mohammed bin Salman to the United States and his alleged, Trump's statements that Saudi might want to pay for U.S. Troops in Syria. So there's a lot of talking, not much, happening policy-wise. I would be cautious as to making specific, assessments of those statements.
Would it be a fair assessment then, Halil, to say that the U.S. is almost irrelevant when it comes to Syria policy, when you have Erdogan, Putin, and Rouhani standing so close to each other?
You cannot ignore United States. They're everywhere. And moreover, Pentagon has an obsession. Now, if you have a policy on the one hand and an obsession on the other hand, obsession wins. So I don't think they will leave, but they have to reach a compromise because they need proxies. How long will proxies last? Direct confrontation they would like to avoid like everyone else. So there will be a compromise. There will be a compromise. I hope that this compromise will not be at the cost of Turkey's security.
Will Turkey ever let that happen?
Anyway, no, we cannot let it happen. When I said burden sharing, that is, burdens are on us. 3.5 million refugees in Iran and Lebanon and Jordan. And on the other hand, somebody else decides the fate of Syria. Now, we have Astana process. We had a meeting in Sochi. These are realistic. These meetings try to bring realistic solutions to the Syrian problem.
But there's a broader picture to all of this as well. We see almost a tear in the Russia-Western Europe relationship, with ambassadors being recalled, with what happened in London, with suspicions and allegations pointing towards Russia. But we see a emerging new order as well right behind you, Yury. How is this playing out at a broader macro level?
Look, Russia is that kind of actor in the Middle East that is very pragmatic, and to Russia, the optics of presence in the Middle East is far more important than the substance of its presence in the Middle East. So definitely this alliance provides that necessary optics of being a great power in the Middle East. That's for sure. But I still would not, discard the U.S. role and how Russia sees the U.S. role in the Middle East, because Russia definitely sees the U.S. very important, and I think Middle East is one of those contexts where Russia hopes to reach some kind of common ground with the Americans. With the Americans. Turkey as well.
Oh, using Turkey against the Americans? How does that play out? How does Turkey fit into all of that?
These are, I think, different layers, because Turkey is Russia's neighbor. They share, a sea, the Black Sea, right? So in that sense, Turkey is a hugely important partner. Trade, finance, everything, security. The Americans, it's more of a global picture on Europe, Eurasia, Middle East. So Russia is definitely looking to find common ground with the Americans on a lot of issues. Iran, fight against terrorism. But it's just that these two are not mutually exclusive.
Ambassador.
Well, first of all, in international relations, the dominant color is gray. Not black, not white. So we have to look at it from this angle. And then also you have to take into consideration that there is one superpower now. Look at the location of the carrier groups of the United States. They are everywhere. South China Sea, Mediterranean, Atlantic, everywhere. So they claim, or maybe they believe in that they have global responsibilities, which means they have global aspirations. But they call it responsibility. In the 19th century, people were more honest. They used to call ministries of defense ministries of war. Now they are defense. If everybody is defending themselves, who is attacking them?
Well, so, Iran certainly says that it has to defend itself from American threats and Saudi threats. And we saw, as you were mentioning, Mohammed bin Salman arrive in the U.S. with a certain agenda. And he called he went after the leadership, the Iranian leadership. How does Iran fit into this equation? I'll begin with you, Yury.
Judging by the statements of Russian officials, Iran does have a role to play in Syria now and after the conflict. So to the Russians, Iran should not, leave Syria once the conflict is over. So to them, Iran is not an existential threat to Israel, to Saudi Arabia. Russia doesn't buy that narrative, for good or bad. And so I don't see how Russia could be looking to, limit Iran's influence in Syria somehow. Russia sees that Iran is instrumental in bringing the political solution to the Syrian conflict, and Russia is playing on that, and Russia wants to benefit off of that.
Thank you so much, Yury Barmin, Ambassador Akinci.
Thank you.